Okay, good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good afternoon. Waalaikumsalam
Uh,
warahmatullahi
the Honorable,
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
the Honorable Mr. Associate Professor Dr. Evan Low Pohok from University Malaysia Sarawak, Malaysia. The Honorable Mrs. Dr. Diah Ekanintias, AKMM, as the Head of Community Service Universitas Hayamuruk Perbanas, Surabaya, and the Honorable all of the participants. Alhamdulillah, today we can meet again in the Zoom meeting in the agenda of Visiting Professor Session 10. Visiting Professor is a weekly agenda from Study Center of Business and Banking, Universitas Hayamuruk Perbanas. Last week we have discussed about a quantitative method, panel data, and hands-on. And now the topic is about how to write a good paper, hand-on training. And the speaker today is Mr. Associate Professor Dr. Evan from Faculty of Economics and Business, University Malaysia Sarawak, Malaysia. He is a editor-in-chief from International Journal of Business and Society, or IGBS. He is editor Konjen Economic and Business, Associate Editor, International Journal of Governance and Financial Intermediation, Guest Editor in International Journal of Economic in Emerging Economics, Board Member Review of Applied Economics, and Editorial Board Journal Management and Kewirausahaan. Okay, let me say hello to Mr. Evan. Good afternoon, Prof. Evan.
Good afternoon. Yeah.
Okay, are you ready for your presentation, Mr. Evan?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, now please to Mr. Evan to deliver the presentation. To Prof. Evan, time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction again. For we are doing this almost every week actually. But today I'm going to have a very I have to say a little bit. Sorry for my side also because I have to leave also by 4 in my time, not Indonesian time, because I have a conference to attend. Actually, they asked me to chair another session, teacher session, so I have to be there virtually in Turkey. So I have to leave. But anyhow, you can always email me or ask me some other question. If you have the slide is here, I think the organizer do give the slides. If not, you can always take it from me. But next week we have another session actually, so you can always keep it for next week. Those of you who want to again, we can have a longer session perhaps next week. So this week actually this is something that we do as an academician, sebagai seorang ahli akademik ataupun as a docent in any university right now. I think this is something we do. How we're going to write a paper and then publish the paper also. So it's not just about teaching. It's not just about doing community services. A part of it is also to get our paper out and publish it. So the question is always how to write a good paper. Good is very subjective. It can be depending on the eye of the people, depending on the reviewer side. So I'm going to talk a little bit on this. Hopefully I can wrap it up about 30 minutes. I'll try to keep my own time, about 30 minutes, and then after that you can ask me question. Right, so next one. So I put up this picture. They write a story, tell a story. People love story. In fact, scientists, researcher, everyone loves story. So this is example of a Cinderella story, where I think some of us knows about Cinderella stories. Perhaps it's a childhood story, or any childhood story that is available, whether in Malaysia or in Indonesia. Perhaps in Malaysia here or Indonesia side, I think your side, Indonesian side, are quite familiar with Upin and Ipin from Malaysia. So that is a story. I mean, there's always a storyline inside Upin and Ipin. It brings a positive message inside there. So same thing when you write a paper, we have to tell a story so that the reader, the reviewer, the editors, and everyone else who read it knows what is going on. Write a story, tell a story in our own way when we do research, even though we do research, right? Okay, so I just started off with the structure of the paper. Certainly, I do not want to go into that part. I just straight to the point. So introduction, when we write introduction, we have to ask ourselves why it's important to do the research. What's the rationale? What's the importance of the problem? The objective must be there. Hypothesis, if any. Most of the time, we do not write the hypothesis inside the introduction, perhaps in methodology or certain other parts. Motivation must be there. Why we do the research? But perhaps a lot based on my experience as from the point of view of editor in that sense, when a paper coming in, a journal, when we receive a paper, we will look into a lot of, the editor will scan through the abstract or scan through the introduction. So normally they will look into the title. Read the title, read the abstract, and then read the introduction, and then see, right? The editorial, the editor first, and then the associate editor will pass through, and so on. So they have a look. If it's okay, then they will send to the next process. If it's not, straight away there's rejection. Why? Perhaps is that normally there's a lot of things they are not clearly defined. That what is the problem actually? The title say like this, but then the introduction says otherwise. So sometimes that's the issue here. There's a lot of rejection happens because of that issue, right? I mean, that is from me, from the editor's point of view. When I become an author myself, I also struggle to write this part. Because introduction is not easy to write. It's never easy to write. Anyhow, so continue on with what I'm saying. You have to briefly refer to some prior influence studies, cite some papers. The potential citation that you cite in the paper might be the potential reviewers for your paper, because you say you want to do this, and then you cite this person, you cite that person, you cite A, you cite B and C. They might be the reviewer. Some editors will look at that. Some editors, where they look for reviewer, they look in the reference. They look in the reference that you cited. Some of them have a pool of reviewers they will send to them. Some, they will just look at who is specialized in this thing, which actually the paper that you cite. So you must write it well, right? You must pass. So first stage pass is pass the reviewers, certainly. Link the paper to the work, and then contribute to the literature, provide citation, perhaps some statistic if you have. If you start off with the economic condition, for example, what happened right now, the COVID scenario, and so on, and so you can start off with some statistic and so on, and move forward to your issue, and then after that, right? Pretty much that along my way, becoming reading from the editorial point of view, is that a lot of paper actually fail to address this kind of issue in the introduction, right? They say they want to do this. Okay, this is what we want to do. Straightforward, we want to do, but never tell the story about the background of the research. Background of research is not there. Citation is there, but not the background, right? The background is that the issue. What's the issue actually? What you want to study? Right? Sometimes it takes. It depends on the journal. Most of the time, journal introduction is only about 2 to 3 pages. Not so much like we write our thesis. No, it should be very short. It depending on the journal, right? Certain journal, like for example, that journal there is letters. Like for example, applied economic letters. For example, marketing. And they have letters also, management, and then you have finance research letters, and a lot more. Other example of economic letters itself. They only have a very short paper, like 5 pages paper. So you don't expect introduction 2 pages. Introduction is only maybe one paragraph. That's it. So you must write very, very briefly. So it depending on where you want to send, right? Depending also on where you want to send itself, right? Now, if you have any question later on, I mean, continue on. Motivation should be there. Discuss the motivation. Are you solving the problem? Are you contributing to the existing literature? Is there any new data set? Are you building up a new theoretical framework or new theoretical things and so on? Those are the things you need to discuss. What's the contribution? What's the novelty? What's new? Right? And then provide evidence of why it is interesting and why it should be published. Certainly, most of the time we always say that our novelty is that we are, I mean, certain papers normally say that we are the first who do this, right? Try not to say that we are the first who do this. Look at the other way around, rather than say that we are the first who do this in the literature. No, we can say that we contribute to the literature in this. We expand the model. The original model like this, our model is like this. So that's part of it. That's the contribution, the motivation. Why we study this? Because the scenario, perhaps the scenario is relevant for this context. It's relevant for this context. It's relevant for this context. When you see this, editor sees that, they might say, oh, this might be a good paper to send for review. Right? Then we move to the second part. Normally, certain papers have this part, literature review. Some papers do not have this part. Perhaps it's because it's a very short paper, like 4 or 5 pages. You don't have literature review. Your literature review also inside the introduction. So the inside introduction, there's a debate on the literature, maybe 1 paragraph. The second paragraph is about your problem, about your issue, and then the third paragraph a little bit about your contribution, your objective, and so on and so on. That's it, finish. Perhaps 1 page or 1.5 page. If you have a little bit more space, then you can write up to 2 pages or 3 pages. But do not write too much for the introduction. This will, I mean, you're not, again, certain journals perhaps accept a very long paper, but most of the time right now, the journals do not accept a very, very long papers. Right, literature review, discuss the paper that is cited, and then the previous contribution, what is we known, what we do not know, and so on and so on. The key is to show that you are familiar with the literature, because this makes us credible in the eye of referees and editors, right? If the editors are if the journal that you send, the editors are the expert in that particular field. And when I say expert, means that they are the expert. That's why they become editors. But some of the editors not necessarily the expert of that particular field, but they can become the editors too, because they have a lot of support by the associate editors and the editorial board. So they can pass to the editorial board, pass to the associate editor to have a look. So we do not want to say, we do not want the referee or the reviewer say, I thought I'm the expert in the field, but the paper never cite me. The editor says, perhaps. The editor says, the potential papers never cite us, never cite the journal, never cite this one, never cite that one. So it will be becoming another issue there. They say, oh, this is not suitable. So, put aside, might be rejected. Although we do a very localized issue, a very small issue, we have to know that the literature can be the world, not necessarily just one particular place, not necessarily. If we do a study on Indonesia, we only cite Indonesian studies. We should cite some other studies relevant, available in the literature, but from a different perspective, depending. Again, this all depending on the journal that you are targeting. Right, these are several things. Do not include all published papers, certainly not, except that you do systematic literature review or you do bibliometrics analysis. Right, and make sure that your reference is up to date. Up to date means that you can have a paper that you cited in 1960, 1970, 1980, no problem, because that's where the theory comes from, or the idea comes from. But then do not forget the cite the most latest one, maybe 2020, 2021, and so on. Although it might not be 100% the same, you must, to show that you know the literature, we know the literature, and then the editor say, this is something worthwhile because the authors knows the literature. Right. These are the several things that perhaps we often also go through, right? Do not list down summarize literature findings just like that, you know, like how we write in a thesis, each paragraph and so on. Do not do that. This one is for the thesis, not for the paper. For the paper, you must write it transitionally, nicely, perhaps. You combine everything into one paragraph. You have maybe 10 papers inside there, and not just each paper, one paragraph. That will be a thesis. Good big journal article, international journal article, do not want to see that, right? Do not want to see that. That's not the thing. So I bring you some example. This is I mean, in these slides here brings this is one example. This is a very localized issue, talks about ethnic food consumption, but published in a very high journal, high ranking journal. It's actually Q1 journal in SSCI, which is impact factor. This is the impact factor of the journal just now. Tourism management 10.10. 10 impact factor. This is Q1 top journal in tourism. But the issue is ethnic food, and this about Dayak ethnic food, which Dayak is here in Malaysia and is there also in Indonesia. Which Dayak here normally here in this Borneo Island here. Right, most of the population live in Borneo Island. So that is very localized issue, but they bring up the write-up is a very international. They started off with a little bit of introduction, what's the issue all about, and then bring up the issue. I highlight a little bit here. Bring up the issue, and then they have literature review section on ethnic food and tourism. So this is not new. I mean, someone done it somewhere else, but perhaps not on Dayak food. So that perhaps the new things they sell, and so on, and the theory behind the TPB and so on, they using that inside here, and the methodology is latest, is up to date, and so on. So this is one example, right? This is the latest journal impact factor 2020, just released few days ago. So that's why I share with you. Right. So the next one here is the next part of the methodology. It must be up to date. I mean, you must know the literature. You must know what's the methodology they use. State well, explain well. Do not be repetitive. If the method is well known, you just have to cite here and there and so on. If it's new, explain it a little bit more and so on. Right. Moving forward, tell how this methodology will answer your objective and so on. List some papers that use similar methodology. You can cite several good papers from good journals, right? And so on. If there is alternative methodology, step why you do not use them and why you pursue with the method that you use. So that kind of a discussion perhaps must be inside the methodology. Simple, brief, but straightforward, right? And certainly the hypothesis if we have it, and then and all the other details, right? The data description must be there. I'll show some example of data description, good data description from several journals. And then this one is that this one will be more of the result already, right? This one move forward to the result. In the data description, sometimes we also provide descriptive statistics. Again, it depends on studies. Like finance studies, accounting, finance, banking studies, perhaps they have all these descriptive statistics, but not all the studies having that, right? Depending on the sample, they use the data. If it's questionnaire, explain. If it's qualitative, explain, and so on and so on. This is moving forward to the results, you know, discussion of result. You can always say that like this. This finding is in agreement. However, the result have not previously been described, and this was in contrast. You can write up in such a way. This is one style of writing. You can always write your certainly your own way. Describe it in your own way, right? Results. Report the result in professionally done table. It's not good idea to copy and paste from statistical program output. I always tell my the participants of any webinar that I do, or especially my own student, I always tell them, do not copy and paste 100% from the statistical program, SPSS ke, Smart PLS, and Vivo, or whatever you use, eView, Stata, R, whatever you use. If you want to copy and paste the result, do your own tables, do your own a little bit of infographic. Yes, perhaps some figures from R or from VOS viewer, you copy and paste straight away, or from Smart PLS. Yes, you copy straight, but it's actually yours. In that sense, it's yours, not that the template are the same, but the things inside are not the same. You know, not just copy and paste it. The tables should be self-explanatory. It should not be, example like this. This is a long, boring tables. You can put it in the thesis, but in the paper, we want something more exciting, more insight. Lately, more. The international journal, especially in Elsevier, if you want to send paper in Elsevier, most of the journal in Elsevier are Scopus, or could I say all, because Elsevier, Scopus belongs, Elsevier belongs Scopus. They are linked in some way. Elsevier journals, they come up with graphical abstract right now. It's been a while. Graphical abstract. What does that mean? Graphical abstract means that they want us, although our paper is very theoretical, is very do not have any graph, they want to have a graphical illustration of the paper, or infographic, I would say it right now. So that sometimes is more important rather than we present the statistic, the data that would not attract anyone, from a different perspective again, right? So although the result is good, but it takes a while for the editors, the reviewer to look at it and say, oh, this is what happened, and so on, right? This is beyond that. Perform robustness check of the findings. Robustness checks means that you, after you have your model, you might want to test another model, alternative model, and so on and so on, and more testing. This is more towards econometrics testing or statistical testing, robustness, sensitivity analysis. You can check the sample period. This is the recent requirement from top international journal. If you see a lot of top international journals right now, they have robustness check. They have baseline model with control variable, and then after that, extra estimation, or do a little bit more with this variable, with that variable, and so on, from different perspective, right? Or from different measurement. Like, for example, if you do something on reputation, perhaps there are few definition of reputation, so they use few of the definition of reputation. Or you use institutional. Institutional also have a lot of definition, so they use different definition, and then they estimate the different definition and see the result, whether it changed or not. So that's called robustness, right? Whether the result is robust. So this is one example. In a journal called International Review of Economic and Finance. It's called the paper 2019, Bank Regulation and Efficiency. It's very good written paper, and it's they do on 21 panel studies, GMM, 21 transition countries. So it's a quite huge studies in that sense. So it says the sample consists like this: 319 banks from 21 transition economy. These are the countries, and these are the description of the data. Description of the data a little bit long, but this journal allowed a little bit longer paper, so it's okay. Right? Then you have control variable, and then this is the model they explain well. This is part of methodology. And this journal actually Q2. This is the impact factor, the latest impact factor. This is in Q2. Right? So although it's also a very, very good journal. Very good journal. And this is the description of the sources and of the data. They put it nicely in the table. If you think that is too long, this one example of banking studies on finance studies. A lot more other studies. I just give this as the example. Right? The data they get it from, and so on. Right? So, and this is like the table. Yeah. Although this looks bigger, but this is the standard one, and then this is self-explanatory. This is model number 1, model number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like I told you, they have different models, so they test for the different robustness in that sense. Right, system GMM they use. Then they have sensitivity analysis or robustness. I you can search on this paper if you want. If not, I can give it to you. Right. The other paper that I want to discuss, this is an Indonesian paper, just published recently, 2021, by numbers of friends of mine from UNS, from 11 Maret. This is Universitas 11 Maret. Recently published, and it's one country study, Indonesia, talks about spin-off policy and effective way of improved performance in Islamic Bank. So they compare within Islamic Bank and within itself in Islamic Bank, whether this policy actually, the spin-off policy actually works for them, and they use a method called DID to do that. And this is again a very good paper written and published in a very good journal, right? And yes, it can penetrate also in a very good journal itself, like for here. It's in Q1 right now. Right? This journal is in Q1 as of 2020, rebuff to call it, right? And they have this. This is from their paper. This is from the paper. Descriptive statistic for the full sample, and then they have separate the sample into sub-samples so that to know the effectiveness of the policy. That's the interesting part about the paper, right? Our research explore how spin-off policy could impact performance efficiency of the Islamic bank windows. Means that from changing from perhaps from Islamic bank, from non to Islamic banks. So changing from that, are they getting much more better, and how it performance, right? So this is a very interesting time. They have robustness check. One of the criteria this is not in impact factor. All right. So, and then the last part normally is that will be the conclusion, a clear one. Keep it brief. State the key conclusion. Avoid if you of citation. Summarize the research and the policy implication, what we can do, and so on and so on. Right. So, like this paper, like again, I'll say this paper is very timely because of what happening, not just right now, but in this Islamic banking, Islamic finance issues, and so on. So that's why it's relevant and it's publishable. The issue is there, timely relevance, although it's from one country, Indonesia, but they do like a panel study, but on a different note. There's not, and then they have this. I think they use the dummy variable, right? You see here, a spin-off post. One for the full-fledged Islamic bank from the spin-off. One is after this bank decided to spin off from the parent bank. Means that. So how's the performance after they spin off and so on? So this is another interesting thing from policy perspective and so on. Right. So conclusion. Do not overstate the finding. However, implication must be based on the evidence. Do not exaggerate the result. No speculative statement. A future recommendation is always recommended, right, for the future. And then after that, when we have written introduction up to conclusion, we write the abstract. Abstract is like preview, a sneak peek, advertisement of the paper. This is our paper that I already shared this thing in my first lecture. So I do not want to go into this again. But again, this is another example of Indonesian case study published in a journal. Talks about reputation for firms. Right. This one is in this journal, International Journals of Finance and Economics. It's Q1 right now in 2020. Previously, last year they are not Q1. Now they are Q1. So my co-authors suddenly becoming wow. When you see the statistic, like, oh, this is good. It jumped into Q1 from Q2. It jumped into Q1 in 1 year. Move forward very fast and so on. Right. So let me go through. Right. This is one way of writing an abstract. A lot of other ways of writing abstract. This is another way of writing abstract. Again, I share a recent paper published by again friends in UNS, and then from also from I think OJK, and then from ITB, right? A few authors. So this is finance research letter, very short paper, but talks about again very relevant issues right now. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us doing this thing, digital technologies on micro, small, medium business in Indonesia. Sample is 2022 survey, right? Survey 2000 plus survey, but very short because it's letters, very short. I think it's about 4 pages only, this paper, and it's also Q1 right now. Right? The abstract for this journal actually should not go beyond 200 words, right? Should not go beyond 200 words. So and the whole paper, whole paper should not go beyond 2,500 words. 2,500 only for the whole paper, full paper for this journal, finance research letter. So they have limitation in terms of that, right? So this is finance research letter. These are the one that I collect. I mean, what's the common reason for rejection? Lack of motivation, no contribution, poorly written, not proper methodology, not sufficient knowledge. This again, the editor would judge it from the way that we write introduction and so on and so on, and the citation and the reference that you put in, right? Always ask this question: why do you want me to read your paper? What's the relevant? What's the question? How do you answer it? What's the contribution in that sense, right? So in the end of the day, certainly publication takes time, so plain, required good planning, writing, findings. It takes a long way. Sometimes rejection takes a while, so it takes time with revision and so on and so on. So sometimes it takes a while to publish paper, perhaps up to 1 year. Certain people maybe 2-3 months, it depending. This is another example of a journal, International Journal of Hospitality Management. See how the way that they write the abstract talks about digital marketing strategy. This is based on carried out in 132 Belgian hotel. Talks about this is actually from primary research, right? Very straightforward. This is also a very good journal. I Google it, found it. It's also in Q1. Impact factor 9. 9, you know. If you have one of these or one of the tourism management, guess you easily get the professor after that, right? In any country. So anyhow, so I'm moving into the end. Certainly, you can ask me several questions. This is actually from the journal that I becoming one. I mean, the editors. International Journal of Business and Society is a Malaysian journal, Unimas journal. Taking care of the journal. I'm one of the caretaker of the journal, babysitter of the journal. This is from the latest paper that we published from Indonesian paper, right? Abnormal related parties transaction, political connection, firm value evidence from Indonesia firms. Panel studies, 2021, and we just found out from the recent, although we are not part of impact factor, we just found out that the latest journal citation reports also including us inside the report, because we are part of the Web of Science or the Clarivet, but we are not impact factor yet. A lot of other journals actually in ESCI. In Indonesia, I think you have a few of it who are in ESCI also. All right. So just to share, these are the numbers that we have. Just this 2020 is the first time they reported it. So this is an interesting fact here. If we don't have impact factor, but if we have impact factor, perhaps this is our number, 0.55, based on this, not based on me, based on Journal of Citation report. So we're still very low, about Q4 in impact factor, Q3 in Scopus. So anyhow, this is another interesting issue, also published by an Indonesian. I think the group of them from, this you can see they are detail there. This is from a journal called, this is the journal name, Corporate Governance International Journal of Business in Society. Do not confuse with our journal. Our journal is International Journal of Business and Society. Their journal is Corporate Governance ... International Journal of Business in Society. They are not impact factor journal also, but they have a higher citation indicators than us, because they are more well established and they are in Emerald. This is from the Emerald. You can have a look. It's very interesting issue. I just found it yesterday. No, early this morning actually when I Googled it. Do female executive and CEO tenure matters for corporate cash holding? Insight from Southeast Asians country. This is new study panel. They do panel studies, right? So another interesting one published Q2. This is in Q2. We are in Q4, right? They are in Q2. So a little bit far in that sense, but it's okay. We're in Q4 still. Again, in the end of the day, when you craft a paper, when you write a paper, how to write a good paper is that you must have solid, interesting, attractive, unique data set. That, for example, even you write an Indonesian case study, no problem as long you write it well, uniquely, sell the story, and so on. You must have robustness tests, and then localized issue, international appeal. This is the most important thing, right? That's the most important thing. And do not wait, right? Identify key idea, tell a story, nail the contribution, related works, put example, listen to your readers. Moving forward, we talk about collaboration, research, publish, and flourish. Always, I think I will end my slides here. If any question, I can take few questions, and then you can ask me several. Ask me question. No problem. Yeah, the slide is already there inside the chat box there. Right, so you can ask me several. You can ask me a question. Right, I have to go off in about 15 minutes, but can ask me a question. Thank you very much for this opportunity again.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Evan, for sharing the day today. And now we go to the next session, question and answer session. Okay, maybe there is a question from the participants. You can write the question in the chat room, or you can say directly. Okay.
I guess
mungkin dari Bu Diah Eka. Oke. Silakan Bapak Ibu jika ada pertanyaan. Ya. Okay, this is the question from Mr. Erwin. Yeah, how to change SPSS diagram or table into other form, or can we directly using qualitative sentences? Okay. Please, Prof. Evan, to answer the question from Mr. Erwin.
Thank you for the question. For the other question from Abdurrahman, actually the slide is already there in the chat box. You can download the slide. I think Evie has put it up in the chat box. Anyhow, so Erwin from just now you say here you're from this university. So anyhow, so thank you for the this important question. Yes, I know that when I say do your own table, you should not just copy and paste the whole output, not table, output from the program, SPSS or whatever output, should not copy and paste and just put up in the in Microsoft Word and say, oh, this is the table. It should do the table that is relevant to you. Perhaps not everything inside the results are the output you want to explain. You just want to explain several things. So put it up that several things only. If you have a diagram, no problem. Like I told you, you copy the diagram. It's no problem. Like when you, I mean, in terms of diagram, if you do a bibliometric analysis in VOS Viewer or R, they come up with the diagram. Certainly, you can copy and paste the diagram because you cannot reproduce the diagram because the program produced the diagram. What I meant was mostly on the table, not the diagram itself. Diagram is diagram. Right? Diagram, you cannot change what is there, except that you want to draw it yourself. You want to draw it yourself, that one is different story. So other than that, the original diagram from the other program, it can be copy and paste, but that is yours. That is your result. What I meant, most of the time, copy and paste was the output. For example, like SPSS output, take everything and put it inside there. When reviewer editors will see that, this is from SPSS. this is from SPSS itself. All right, right. That's the answer for the question. I think they have the other question there from Sony. Yeah, from Sony here. For qualitative research, is it important to show the interview transcript? It depends. It depends on the journal. Certain journals perhaps required you to put the questionnaire or the transcript, including questionnaire actually. I mean, not questionnaire. If it's a qualitative, it's more deep interview. The question is the theme of the question. Several journals, depending on journals, they also require, some journals require even primary studies, quantitative primary studies, they require the authors to put in the questionnaire itself. Transcript, not necessary. Again, I say depending on the journal. Because when you talk about qualitative, most of the time you want it to be, you do not want, how should I say, most of the time you do not reveal the one being interviewed or something like that. You just a respondent A, respondent B, respondent C, and so on and so on. You don't really put up their names and so on, right? For that interview transcript, but perhaps name some indicators of that particular person will be out. So that will not is not right already. You the person actually not review person background and everything. So again, it depending, right? It depends on what your the journal that you're trying to send, right? All right. Okay. There are a few more questions or tag here. Okay. From Teresia. Yeah.
Yes.
I can read here. No problem. I can read here. Wow, there's a lot of question here. Thank you. What is the important point when we do experimental research? This is an interesting thing. I've not really done an experimental research myself. SU is that if you are interested to do this experimental research, you could look at how the previous literature doing it, and then from there you can identify what is important inside the experimental research. Certainly, experimental research is one of the approach of how, one of the approach of how you do the, research from the paradigm experimental. This, like for a difference, the DID is actually also called quasi-experiment. Quasi means half or not fully experiment, the DID method. So how they do, they set up the experiment and then they test it. In this case is that they set up perhaps a certain policy. You want to test effectiveness of government policy, government intervention, and so on. So that is like experimental. So if you want to do a full experiment, like how the medical field are doing it, or you want to follow, I would suggest, if you want to look into experimental research, you look into research by this in ESTER, Esther, ESTER, DUFLO, Esther Duflo. She and the husband, which is the other Nobel Prize winner, do a lot of research on experimental approach on, including they do the studies in Indonesia actually, and several countries like Africa, on how effective vaccination is. They even do that kind of that type of study. So anyhow, look into that, see how they do it, and follow closely, and then you can do your own. Right? Thank you for that. Okay. So the next one here, also from Kediri, Indonesia, Niska. Should the data from SPP? What is SPP? Should the data from SPP have to share on another form on our paper, or only the important things? I do not know what is SPP. Anyhow, so maybe I go to the next one. Do you know?
Okay, maybe from Mr. Saihul can explain about the question.
Oh, SPSS. Okay, SPSS.
Oh, SPSS.
Should the data? When again, I'm not sure whether you refer to the data that you estimated or the data from your result itself. Right. It depends. Again, it depends on if the data that I understand will be your original data that you collected, the data that you collected actually, most of the time the journal might not require you to upload the data, but lately certain journals also require the authors to put up the data. Why? Because if the next researcher want to repeat the study, they will be able to get the same result as yours. Repetition. Several journals, actually good international journals, are doing that if they're required. If it's not required, it's okay. Elsevier journals, some Elsevier journals require you to do that, but not every journal must put inside the paper. Not every journals, right? They do it so that others can repeat the estimation and get the same result. All right. So that's the question. The next one here, in the literature review, we write the definition and explanation about our variables, or only write the results of the previous study? It's an interesting question. Literature review, you should not just explain about, I do not see why you explain the variable in literature review. Literature review should be about previous journal, about the evolution of the ideas, the revolution of the ideas, the debates. It's not about explaining variables. Explaining variables is in data description, the next session, methodology, not in this section from a question from Penny. But thank you very much. It's not inside there, certainly. Abdurrahman, action research. To tell you frankly, I have no idea of that, because my I do more on secondary data rather than primary data. I guess action research are more towards primary data itself. Or if I do translate the word action research, perhaps it's based on several things that we do. Certainly is different from experimental. Experimental is doing experiment without, in our case here, in social science, business, economic, finance perspective, experimental means doing the research without lab, without laboratory. We do the lab is society. You do experimental on the society. Right? With this intervention, without this intervention, what will happen? That is experimental. So you can come first and then give this, and then after that you see the impact, and then you evaluate it, the impact. So that's experimental, right? So like I said just now, the case of vaccination, how to improve vaccination. Perhaps I think what have been done in several parts in Indonesia or generally in Indonesia on the times or on in the terms of vaccination to get the people want to go for vaccinate, they give certain rewards. They give rewards, right? If you go vaccinate, I give you this. If you go vaccinate, I give you that. If you go vaccinate, I give you this. A reward after vaccination. That is like experimental. If without reward, perhaps nobody want to go a vaccination. I just give one example. All right. So so far that's the question that I have. So any more other question?
Yeah, maybe any question from the others?
Ada apa-apa soalan you want to ask? It's good to have also from several friends actually teman-teman daripada other university from this Kediri University, is it? Kediri, Indonesia. All right. Anyhow, any more question that you want to ask?
Yeah, Mr. Evan.
Yes, Abdul
Hello.
Rahman. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Abdul Rahman from STI Alan Bandung. You are a speaker for my conference international. STI Alan Bandung.
Oh, okay. From this September, right?
Yeah, September. Yeah.
September.
So, yeah, this is like because you have give me a material in email, and when my institution will conduct international conference, I remember you. And I give your email to my colleague.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you very
okay,
much.
thank you, Mr. Evan. See you in Bandung, yeah.
Virtually, yes.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, ada teman dari Bandung juga. So, any more question?
Yeah, I think there is no question again,
Ada
Prof.
pertanyaan? Tidak ada. But anyhow, you can keep, if you have anything, any question that you want to ask, you can always ask. Next week, we have another session for more on focusing again on the, for submission and so on, I will introduce some of the things that I will have in mind. Also, we have one question here from
One question,
yeah,
Mr. Evan. Is
yeah,
it paper is still there is novelty in the paper? Still must for paper. Apakah harus still the papers still have novelty?
Okay, thank you for the question. Yes, I will answer you that one, Abdul Rahman. Let me answer this one question from Budia here. Qualitative research, can you use more than one theory? Personally, I do not see any problem, but then again, you should look into the literature. You should look into the journal that you want to target, and look into their papers. They do that. If they do that, why not? If not, then you should follow the journal. Should not just should follow the journal itself. But I do not see that as a problem in general. It doesn't matter from qualitative or quantitative. You can use more than one theory. No problem. Hybrid. We have a hybrid more notion right now. Hybrid, we are doing in the next future, our teaching will be like a hybrid mode. We cannot just have one mode of face-to-face. We will have a hybrid mode where video recorded and several face-to-face. I mean, for years to come, we're going to have hybrid. So hybrid, same thing. theory, more than one, no problem. I don't see that as a problem. For your question, Abdul Rahman, your question actually just lost. What's your question again?
Yeah.
Novel,
About
correct,
novelty.
novelties.
Yeah, novelty. This is like a must for
Yes.
the paper. Yeah.
The
Okay.
answer is yes, because novelty will build a lot of other things. But then novelty, depending on what you're looking at, novelty. Novelty itu, they have threshold of novelty also. When I say threshold, means that novelty can be built on innovation, can be built on contribution, and a lot of other things. When I say innovation, means that you should innovate. Like this thing is already there, but you innovate it into several other things and so on. So innovation can create novelty in that sense, right? So thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will to give the conclusion about this session. Research is one of the critical activities of higher education. As a lecturer or student, make a good research is very important so that the research can be published in journal, international journals or international journals. Okay, I think this is the end of the session. Thank you so much, Prof. Evan, for sharing today, and thank you for the participants who joined today. Before I close the session, I want to remind you to fill attendees and evaluation form. The links are in the sample, and upon the e-certificate will send to your email. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I want to inform you that next Saturday we will also have visiting professor session 11, and the topic is about using journal, submission, and sharing your work. Okay, I think that's all from me. We are sorry for mistakes during the program. See you next Saturday. Good afternoon and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor. See you next week.